Welcome to Tov Jewish News Channel. With us today is the former Consul General of Israel to the Southwest and the former advisor to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Gilad Katz. But before that, let's watch a small teaser from our new series on Hamas. Hamas in your backyard.
The crusades of the thousands of years ago are depicted as a Western invasion of the Middle East in order to destroy Islam. The same thing is Israel. Both Christianity and Judaism conspired in order to defeat Islam by creating something like resurrection. And this is what boggles the mind.
Good morning, Gilad.
Your viewers.
Gilad, recently we saw some changes in the Biden administration and the way they talk about Israel. So, for example, yesterday, Biden sent out a tweet where he compared the war in Gaza to terror and said that basically Israel is doing in Gaza what Hamas did to Israel. Are you seeing a change in the rhetoric of the Biden administration? And if there is a change in rhetoric, how will that affect Israel in the future?
I don't think there's a major change. I understand that the Biden administration, as we go along, as this war, for a lot of reasons, our reasons at least, keeps on going. The Biden administrations want us to stop the war, the fighting, and that's why they now starting to sort of fine-tune their rhetoric. But in the core issue, I think that the President Biden himself, and I'm talking about the President himself, he understands who is on the right side of history and who's on the wrong side. He totally stands and supports us, and he is against the Hamas. We have to understand, the Israeli government has to understand, and the Israeli society have to understand that even though there will be pressure as we continue in the coming days and months, weeks and months, this very important struggle of ours against the Hamas, we have to understand that the pressure on us will be, we will feel much more pressure, and we should adapt to that pressure, meaning we should stay still, and we should tell exactly our allies and our enemies that this is something that we will not stop until we destroy totally the Hamas. This is nothing less than that will be acceptable. Once we do such, that will be our diplomacy. I think that the Biden administration, the United Nations, Europe, the EU, they won't like our diplomacy, but at least they will understand where we're standing, and there won't be any surprises. And that's very important, not to surprise anyone, letting them know where we're going to, our goals, and eventually what will really happen here. And of course, we'll have to explain to them that we are fighting their war, because we are only in the Hamas's eyes and in the fundamentalistic Islam eyes, Israel is just the first step. After us comes Europe, and after that comes Washington and the United States. Therefore, it is their interest for us to win the war, to destroy Hamas, and to enable the democratic countries to win this very vicious, cruel war against terror.
But Gilad, let me interject for a second. We clearly see from the Biden administration that their vision for Israel after the war and the Middle East in general is basically seeing the Palestinian Authority coming into Gaza and basically taking it under its wing. This is clearly not in Israel's interest. But how do you see Israel and America kind of settling our differences and agreeing on a general, a future for Gaza that will be both good for Israel and acceptable for the United States?
So I'll say something that will surprise you. Even though we are very close allies with the United States, there are issues that we disagree. And this is one of the major issues that we disagree with the Americans. the Israeli government, the Israeli society understands that a Palestinian authority, a Palestinian state in Gaza is, in our eyes, is a threat on our citizens and our security. Therefore, we will not allow the Gaza Strip to become once again under the authority of any Palestinians. Now, this is something that we will not, that Americans will not accept, and this is how this will stay as a dispute between us two. We have 80% of the issues we agree with the Americans. There are around 20% that we disagree. This is one of them, and this is something that, as a sovereign state, we have to stand on our interest, even though we do not agree with Americans on these issues. I'll say even more than that. We should explain to everyone in the United States, in the United Nations, everyone, that our policy has got nothing to do with what they call occupation. This is our security. This is I would say, one of our most important interests, and we will not allow any player, regardless if we're talking about the Arab world, Palestinians, America, the United Nations, we will not allow them to dictate our interests. This is why we are a sovereign country. And if we will not, if the other side, anyone, the Americans, any other player will understand that there are issues that this is our red line, we will not agree with them, then we will stay, the dispute will stay on the table. I think they will live with it, we will live with it, and we can continue. We don't have to portray or depict a scenario that we have to agree on 100% of the issues with the Americans. This is our interest, this is our security, and we will not allow anyone to dictate our security.
So you rightfully said that we agree with Americans on 80% of the issues, right? But this is not a minor issue. This is an issue that will define our future and probably decide whether we will continue to exist as an independent state in the Middle East or not. Well, this is a question that might influence our relations with the United States in the future, because Biden might say, under the influence of all of his pro-Palestinian advisors, that if Israel does not agree to a pro-Palestinian state, for a Palestinian state, then they will limit their support for Israel, or maybe the support will disappear entirely. Do you see that happening in the future?
I don't see it happening, and I hope it won't happen. Look, the disagreements between Israel and America on what they call the territories is not something that started yesterday. We're talking about since 1967. We have a very major dispute between us and the Americans about the future of the Yudan Shomron, and this dispute will continue, I think, for the next century or so. And I don't think the Americans have many more interests as a superpower in the world. They have many more interests. They see Israel as an ally, as an asset. Even though we have a disagreement, as I said, we don't have to put ourselves in the corner and say, if we don't accept exactly what the Americans tell us, then who knows what will happen. We shouldn't see diplomacy doesn't work that way. We have our abilities, and we should know how to work with the Americans, even though we have this disagreement. It's not all 100% with us or 0% against us. It doesn't work that way. With diplomacy, we can, there's what we call the gray area, and in the gray area, there are disputes. I think America understands that. They will understand that they can live with it. And I don't think we should scare ourselves by saying, if we don't accept 100% of the American policy, then who knows what will happen? It didn't happen for the past 56 years. I don't think it will happen in the future. We have to get the respect of all the players in the international community, meaning they have to know our red lines, and this is a red line for us. After the 7th of October, everyone understands what will happen if we won't stand on our security interests. Therefore, we should draw our red lines and say we will not accept any what they call solution that is against our interests, meaning we will not allow the Palestinian Authority to go back and to the Gaza Strip. I just would like to remind everyone, the Palestinian Authority between 1994 and 2007, Palestinian Authority was the only authority that ruled the Gaza Strip. That was 16 years ago. If we will, for any sort reason whatsoever, we will do that major mistake and allow them to go back and rule the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Authority to rule the Gaza Strip, we will find ourselves in the coming future, in a year, 2, 5 years from now, with a major threat of another 7th of October. And this is something we will not allow to happen in any case whatsoever.
Of course. Gilad, you correctly said that the US is the biggest ally of Israel, and we had good relations throughout all the years that we have been in contact. However, we do see a change in the perception of Israel in the eyes of the American public. For example, a recent poll that came out, if I correctly remember, a couple weeks ago, showed that almost 50% of Gen Z, of my generation, cannot decide whether Hamas are the good guys in the war with Israel or if Israel is the good guy. So will that affect Israel's relations with the US? And if it does, should Israel look in the world to find another coalition of allies to continue its policy and to continue to support its existence?
So I'll start with the second question. I think Israel should always look for more and more allies, regardless what happens with our relations with America. This is our interest. We should find allies all over the world. It's important for us, and that's what we should do. To your first question, I agree. I think that the major, I would say, challenge of Israel and Israel's diplomacy is to reach out to the Z generation, as you called it, and to explain to them and to show them and to bring them here, the leaders, and to let them understand that the situation here in Israel is much more complicated than they think. It's not just the Palestinians against the Israelis and the occupation and all that. We're talking about a very, very sensitive situation, and Israel, the diplomacy of Israel should be very, very harsh about that. We should work day in and day out with, not against, with the next generation of leaders in the United States, and we should understand and tell them that for their interests, it's not only for our interests, it's for their interests. Because if we will lose the war, and I hope we don't, and I believe we don't, but if we, for some reason, lose the war, then the fundamentalistic Muslims will keep on marching into their own cities, into Washington, into LA, into Chicago, and Miami. And then they will have it on on the doorstep. So this is their interest, to stand stiff with us, to support us, and to allow us to destroy the Hamas. Destroying the Hamas now will be a great victory for not only for us, but for the entire democratic liberal world.
Gilad, I want to ask you one last question before we finish. I want to switch from the US back to Israel. You've also been the former advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, not only the Consul General in the southwest. And I want to ask you, do you see what way is the Netanyahu administration going with the war in Gaza? What solution after the war do you see about governing Gaza? What direction are they going to?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. I think that for at least for as we speak, there's no sort of a solution. What Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned a week or 2 weeks ago is that we will not allow the Palestinian Authority to go back and rule the Gaza Strip, and what we will do is we will maintain sort of a security understanding for us that we won't allow them, the Hamas, whoever the terror organizations in the Gaza Strip, we won't allow them to once again grow up from the ashes. So we will for some time, and I think it's very temporary, we will stay there with our arms and our army, and to see to that the Hamas is destroyed and is done with. Your question about the long-term resolution, I think that we should think about in a different perspective. We should think about a sort of a more harmonic resolution, meaning all the area. We have to think about three major players. We should think about us, of course, Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinians. Those three players are doomed to live together, and we should see how we can work out a solution that will enable all three players to live in a security for their own sake. Since I am an Israeli, I think that Israel should do its best to change the way of thinking and start thinking of Jordan as Palestine. That means we should remove all the Palestinian issues to Jordan, and then with Jordan we can solve the Hashemite kingdom by moving them into a different place. Not us moving. This has to be as I said, has to be a it's a very complex situation. But I think we should now put our eyes on the ball, meaning on the current situation, on defeating and destroying the Hamas. And while we do that, we should already think about the future and the resolution of the Middle East situation for the coming decades. This is something that we have to think about now. But as I said, what we first and foremost have to do is to destroy the Hamas. That's our first and most important goal for the time being.
Gilad, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Was with us right now Gilad Katz, the former Consul General to the Southwest. You were watching the Tov Jewish News channel. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Watch us on all of our social platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and all the other platforms. Have a great day.
The Crusades of the 1,000 years ago are depicted as a Western invasion of the Middle East in order to destroy Islam. The same thing is Israel. Both Christianity and Judaism conspired in order to defeat Islam by creating something like resurrection. And this is what boggles the mind.